Thank you so much for having us here today and having me and my ministry here. Very, very grateful. As was mentioned, my name is Guy Hammond, and I am an evangelist in Canada. I've led several churches across Canada for many years, but several years ago started this ministry called Strength and Weakness Ministries. And it's a ministry that has three primary purposes. The first purpose is to help Christians who come from a homosexual background, but who now as disciples still live with unwanted same-sex attractions. The second purpose of the ministry is to help families within our brotherhood who have an immediate family member who's been involved in the gay life. And then the third is turned into an educational tool where now, as was mentioned, we have a website, but my wife and I also travel around the world speaking on this issue because it's so multifaceted, so confusing, so difficult to understand. I began to realize a few years ago, we just don't really have anything in place to know how to dialogue on this very confusing issue. I thought we need to do something here and really provide the bridge building language we all need to be able to dialogue on the issue of homosexuality in a way that does not lower the traditional biblical sexual ethic and yet also at the same time lifts up the love, the mercy, and the compassion of Jesus. And so, everywhere I go, of course, I'm bombarded with questions. I don't have all the answers. I have to admit, on this very confusing issue of this ministry that I lead, I don't have all the answers. I myself have to live within the tension of uncertainty on the issues that we're discussing. But here's something I think we can all agree on, even though we may not have all the answers, and you may not necessarily agree with how I decide to deal with things in my ministry or helping people or whatever. I think we can all agree that every person needs to be treated with dignity, kindness, and respect, regardless of how they choose to live their lives, what decisions they make, whether they ever decide to follow God or not, or what they're attracted to. Everybody needs to be treated that way. I think we can all agree with that today. This is not the main portion of my lesson, but everywhere I go, I always do this part because, homosexuality is probably, the number one hot button issue in the world today. And the whole world is talking about it. Except it seems the Christians. And it's not because we don't care, we do care. But we don't want to spend all of our time arguing. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. We don't want to put our foot in our mouth. And so we think, probably the next best thing then is I'll just say nothing. But as I said, there is a way for us to talk about this where we don't have to give up on our faith, where we can still stand up for what we believe in. And so our passion is to be able to help Christians be able to do that in a loving and compassionate way. What does the Bible actually say about homosexuality? Well, actually not a lot. We get 5 scriptures. That's it. There's a few other times in the Bible where scriptures talk about it in a roundabout way, like, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, that kind of thing. But these are the 5 main scriptures. And you'd think, well, that's not a lot, Guy. I mean, what does that really tell us? Well, even though we only get 5 scriptures, it tells us quite a bit, actually. Because those 5 scriptures come from both testaments. It's important to note that these scriptures were written thousands of years apart by different authors in different languages to different cultures. You see, that's important to notice because a lot of times people will say, well, Guy, you can't believe what the Bible says about homosexuality today. That was thousands of years ago. Well, I know, but these scriptures were written thousands of years ago and apart from each other. Well, Guy, it's written to different cultures. We're a different culture. I know, but these were written to different cultures. Yeah, but Guy, listen, you know what this proves? It proves that God's stance on sexual ethics and on homosexuality supersede time and culture. The Bible makes it clear from Genesis to Revelation that God's intention for human sexuality is that it is to be reserved between that of a man and a woman bound together only in marriage, and anything outside of that is not what God intended. That includes heterosexual activity or homosexual activity. Now, that's not a real popular message today, I know. But it's what I believe the Bible teaches. Who is Guy Hammond? Well, I'll tell you really quickly. I started participating in homosexuality when I was 13 years old. Continued until I was 24. This is me when I was 19. I have a little bit more hair going on there. I'll tell you, I never chose to be attracted to the same gender. I've never met anybody who ever has. Don't ever think that somebody chooses what they're attracted to. Attractions are very automatic and involuntary. We have very little say about what we're attracted to. Now, we are 100% responsible for what we do with those attractions. And so I didn't choose to be attracted to the same gender. I just discovered what I was attracted to at the same time you discovered what you're attracted to. But I made a lot of bad choices and started acting out at a young age, had a boyfriend for 10 years, and finally moved to Toronto, broke up with my boyfriend, moved to Toronto. By the time I was 22 years old, I was spent and feeling really lost and unsure and didn't know where I was going to get help. And somebody invited me to church. It was called the Toronto Church of Christ. I was like, church? You got to be kidding. But honestly, I didn't know where else to go. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I'm in so much trouble here. If I don't get some intervention and some help, if this is how I'm going to continue to live my life, what will my life be like when I'm 34 or 44? Like, will I even live that long? So I went to church, but I was too ashamed and too embarrassed to tell the Christians at the church what I was dealing with, so I kept it quiet. But I attended for 2 years. 2 years of hearing the message, 2 years of hearing the gospel, 2 years of building a relationship with Christians, and finally got to the point where I thought, okay, I can tell these people who I really am. By that time, I had acted out hundreds of times with different men. So I sat down and I told them who I really was, and they were so kind, so loving, so compassionate. We studied the Bible for a few weeks. I got completely transparent and honest about who I'd been, and finally made the decision to make Jesus Lord of my life. Somebody was able to prove to me with an open Bible that Jesus was going to be able to meet my needs better than anything else. My emotional, relational, and certainly my spiritual needs. And I can tell you 30 years of Christianity has proven that true. But I was finally baptized on August 15th, 1987, and I have not participated in any kind of homosexual activity since my conversion 29 years ago. So it's amazing what God has done over the years. And then I got a family, like just rocks my world, right? Because when I was becoming a Christian, I didn't know how would I ever have a family? Who would marry this? Like, I'm not even attracted to women. Like, how would that even happen? And then, there was this girl in my Bible discussion group. And every time I would go to her house, she would bake me something. And as you could tell, that would really impress me. And so we became really good friends. And we enjoyed each other's company, and we just became the best of friends. And I thought, okay, I may be deficient in sexual attraction to the opposite sex, but, I don't want to spend the rest of my life alone. I would love to be able to experience all that life has to offer with another human being. And I thought, why don't I marry my best friend? And so we did. Kathy and I have now been married for 25 years. It's been the best 10 years of my life, and it's a tremendous blessing. And so, but not only that, it's like God wasn't done yet. It was like, God, I'm just going to keep blessing you. So we have a family. I love showing the picture of my family because that's a miracle. There's no way a man who is acting out with hundreds of men, should have this. Nobody knows more than I how blessed I am to have a family. And I guess asked all the time, Guy, how do you do that? Homosexually attracted man, heterosexually attracted woman. Hey, here's our secret. We have given ourselves over to the countercultural yet biblical truth that says that love is best expressed when we focus on what we can give to one another rather than focus on what we can get from one another. And living our lives that way, by doing the best we can to serve one another and love each other and give everything we can to one another, I can do that. I don't know why God works the way He does. If I was Him, I would do things very differently. I spent a lot of years trying to go from being homosexually attracted to heterosexually attracted. Honestly, I think that impoverishes people's faith. I don't think God cares about what we're attracted to. What God wants us to do is to strive to live holy lives. For the Christian, the opposite of homosexuality is not heterosexuality. For the Christian, the opposite of homosexuality is holiness. And I don't know what your gig is. I don't know what your challenge is. I don't know what areas of weakness you struggle with. Listen, God is not staying up late at night worried about what your challenges are, what you're attracted to. Listen, maybe to the degree that it causes you some stress, He's concerned about, but what God wants you to do is take your areas of weakness and challenge, do everything you can to honor and glorify Him. Go do something great with your life. We don't care what you're attracted to. Listen, honor and glorify God. Live a holy life. And by doing so, you'll really be able to honor and glorify God. And so, our ministry, I was just trying to help 30 people. And it got so big, we've now helped Christians in over 60 countries, 150 churches around the world. We're helping thousands of people. That's why we actually had to get together here in Denver, because the ministry's gotten so big so fast we couldn't keep up. We didn't know what to do, and we needed help. So we got with Frank and Erica Kim and Jonathan Hogard. We said, teach us, help us. How do we do this? Because this ministry's gotten so large. And they've been so helpful to us. We're leaving here better prepared to be able to represent the church and Christians around the world on this very difficult issue. This is our website. I really encourage you to check it out, strengthandweakness.org. It's a resource for you. Go there, learn, study. I think you'll find a lot of help there. And I'll let you know about a couple of things that we have available. This is a book I wrote a few years ago, Caring Beyond the Margins, What Every Christian Needs to Know About Homosexuality. You should have that in your library because there's somebody you know. And if you think, oh, I don't think so, well, then either you're probably clued out, but you should definitely have that book in your library. But the other book that I wrote recently, Tempt Away, How to Defeat Every Temptation in Under 60 Seconds, and How to Recover Quickly When You Don't. I wrote this book because I realized about 10 years ago, I just was sinning a lot. I didn't really have a strategy or a plan in overcoming temptation. I thought, I need to do something here. I need to come up with a plan, a strategy, something that I can initiate quickly and easily and use all day long. And so I came up with my little plan, and I just started doing it. And I started to notice that my levels of personal righteousness started to skyrocket. And of course, I haven't done any of this perfectly. Only Jesus could do that. But I was teaching a workshop for the Boston church not too long ago, and some of the elders said, you should write a book about that. I was like, really? They were like, yeah, absolutely. So that's the book. And I promise you, I guarantee it, you do what this book says, you will be able to overcome any temptation in under 60 seconds. Guaranteed. It's not a money-back guarantee, but it is a guarantee. And so we have those two books available at our book table. So I just really want to express my gratitude to the Denver church, to the Lusks and the Ferries, the elders here, certainly for hosting us this weekend so that we can finish off this movie that we were trying to do. But I don't know if you know this, but the Denver church has financially supported us. 3 years ago, the ministry got so big, I couldn't lead a church and do this anymore. So I quit my job. I had somebody call me, another Canadian evangelist. He said, hey, did I just hear you're quitting your job? You're not going to lead the church in Halifax anymore? I said, yeah. He said, so you can do that strength and weakness thing of yours? I was like, yeah. He said, how much money have you raised? I said, oh, no, we don't have any money. He said, let me get this straight, okay? You're 50, You have 4 kids, yeah. 2 kids with special needs, yeah. 2 kids in college, yeah. And you quit your job, and you have no money. Yep. He says, are you crazy? And they got really insecure because I just thought I was being faithful, but I thought, you know what? Faithful, crazy, who cares? God's going to catch us, right? And so I started going around to churches in our fellowship saying, can you help us? And the Denver church is one of the churches who stepped up. And I just want to thank you for your kindness and generosity and for partnering with us in this really unique, one-of-a-kind ministry. There's nothing else like it, not just in our fellowship, but anywhere in the world. And so thank you for being there for us. Thank you for caring for us. We're enormously grateful. So I thought, let's talk about something in closing here that we can all relate to. I thought, should I do something about mothers? Like, it's Mother's Day. Maybe it should be a Mother's Day talk, and we'll talk about, Jesus' mom, Mary. And I thought, here's a topic that we can all relate to, even moms. And that is how to deal with the issue of temptation in our lives. Then I thought, I bet you especially moms could relate to that one, depending on who your kids are. I want to start here. I'll tell you the truth. I wish I found it really easy all the time to overcome temptation. I wish I could tell you today that I'm in such control of my mind, in such control and master of my heart, that I have such power over my actions that, I always overcome temptation. The truth is, I find most days difficult and a battle to do what is right. Now, on most days, I actually am finding that I've got moments of giving into temptation surrounded by hours and hours of personal victory. That hasn't always been the case in my life, but I'm finding that now. And so while I do not have my PhD in overcoming temptation, I passed a couple of classes on it. And so I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. Of course, the only person who's done any of this perfectly is Jesus. And I think Rob asked him to be here in person today, but he didn't show up, so you have me instead to talk about it. But the first thing I'd like to point out about temptation is this. Temptation is not a negative thing. James chapter 1, verse 2, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. And then down in verse 12 it says, blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has proclaimed to those who love him. You know, the word trials here can equally be translated into temptations. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face temptations of many kinds. You see, the truth about temptation is this. Temptation is as much an opportunity for you and I to do the right thing as it is for you and I to do the wrong thing. I'm learning, in fact, that temptation is a very exciting part of my day. While Satan is using temptation as a weapon of mass destruction in our lives, God allows temptation in order to develop our spiritual lives. Temptation provides that opportunity of choice every single day for us to choose between what is right and what is wrong. You know, you live in a free country. You call it free. It's America. I live in Canada. We call that a free country. Probably not as free as yours. But anyway, but we do have good health care. Okay, so. It's okay. There's 350 million of you and there's only 35 million of us. It's easier to figure out for us, right? Do you know what it's like to live beside a country of 350 million people? When there's only 35 million of you, like we just pray every night you don't roll over in your sleep and crush us. But anyway, you know, in these free countries, the truth is you don't have a lot of freedom. Have you ever noticed that? You're driving down the road. Maybe you're in your really cool car. You'd like to really just take off, but there's a sign there. 65. You're not just allowed to go any speed that you want. You have to go according to that sign that you just passed. And if you don't, you'll get pulled over and have to pay a couple $100. You have no choice there. You've just worked a long, tired, and exhausting day. You come home, and all you want to do is plop on the couch and watch TV. But you get inside, and you can't find the remote. You know why? The kids have got it. You can't watch what you want. Every parent knows that. You go to work, you finish up your day, you realize, hey, I had to show up at a certain time. I was only allowed to take my breaks at a certain time, my lunch break at a certain time, my afternoon break at a certain time, and then my day ended, and I'm not allowed to leave until the boss says I can. You're not allowed to just get up and do whatever you want at work. And when the day is over, you just can't take the stapler home with you. You're not free just to do that. No, come on. But see, temptation is one of the few times, and maybe only time, during the day where you get to do what you want to do. It's your opportunity to choose between what is right and what is wrong. It's your chance to be able to decide whether you will honor God or you'll wallow in the darkness. It's your opportunity with only Jesus, God, and the angels watching, and the devil too, trying to find out whether you'll just talk like being a Christian or whether you'll actually walk like a Christian. It's your chance to be able to show to the physical and the spiritual world who it is you're devoted to, who it is you've decided to give your life to. You get to choose. There's no minister, there's no deacon, there's no elder, there's no spouse, there's no child. It's just you and everybody else watching in the spiritual realm, waiting to find out how you'll decide to live. I find that exhilarating. It's thrilling. It's one of the most significant moments of your day. It's a pivotal instant in time where you get to choose to live out your Christianity. I love that. A key instant in time. You get to do this every day. That's so awesome. I can't wait for the next temptation. Oh, come on, bring it on. It's my chance to show the Lord who I'm devoted to. The second thing we need to understand about temptation is this. They're necessary. Engineers tell us that the only way that metal can be safely used is after testing it. And it must exceed the testing requirements repeatedly. The metal used to make up the Air Canada plane I'm flying home on later today, I hope has been tested. I hope it is pure. And in order for it to be purified, it has to go through fire. It has to be melted and molded to fit the designer's purpose. And just as metal must be molded and purified and tested, we, as followers of Christ, must be tested before God to be used for His purposes. The necessity of trials and temptations, I think, teach us several things. Temptation isn't meant to make us sin. God uses it as an opportunity to make it possible so that you don't have to sin. It's not meant to make you bad. God uses it as an opportunity to help you be good. Temptation is not a penalty. Temptation is a privilege for the person undergoing the trial, knowing that they are being strengthened for use by God. The cocoon of the emperor moth is flask-like in shape. To develop into a perfect insect, it must force its way through the neck of the cocoon by hours of intense struggle. Entomologists explain that this is the pressure that the moth must be subjected to and is nature's way of forcing a life-giving substance into its wings. Sorrow, suffering, illness, unemployment, pain, death. These sufferings and trials and tribulations are wisely designed by God to grow us into Christ-likeness. The refining and developing processes often seem slow, but through grace we emerge triumphant. Romans 12 says, don't conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Our minds are not to be conformed, but transformed. Conform means to adhere to. Transform means to change our nature. The Greek word where we get this is the word metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is the same word we use to describe what happens to a caterpillar that changes into a butterfly. What used to inch along the ground in the mud and the dirt can now soar upwards in perfect freedom of flight. That butterfly is us spiritually. After we have been set free from the mud of sinful behavior, slavery, bondage, and the habitual cravings that we used to crawl around in daily. This metamorphosis makes a total change in our nature and is what enables us to be free on a daily basis. Third and finally, we just have to plan for success. We plan for everything. We plan our schedules. We'll plan what we'll watch on TV. We plan with what top will match with what skirt. We plan our vacations. We plan what we'll do with our money. We plan who we're going to text, phone, smoke signal, whatever. We plan everything. But for some strange reason, we as Christians spend almost no time planning on how we'll deal with the one thing we all absolutely know we will experience in the next 24 hours, and that is how to overcome temptation. In my book, Tempt Away, that you're all going to rush back and buy for $15.99 to support my ministry, I offer several steps that when used together, I think will significantly empower you to overcome temptation consistently. But I'm going to share just one idea. When tempted, consider the consequences. There's no such thing as a small temptation. While seemingly insignificant at times, if not dealt with instantly A temptation has the potential to cause massive damage to your life. Temptation will shipwreck a life faster than the Titanic hitting an iceberg. Every marriage that has ended in divorce can have their troubles traced back initially to one small temptation. Every person who has had their lives sucked dry by drugs, alcohol, or illicit sex had their heartbreaking problems start with a single temptation. Temptation left unchecked has ruined entire careers, wiped out personal wealth, ruined political futures, and put people's lives into the abyss. Some of the most damaging and hurtful things I've ever done in my life to other people all started with a single temptation. Some of the most painful things people have done to me all started with a single and simple temptation. The man who sexually molested me when I was 8 years old did so because he did not deal with the enticement to do so when it first entered his mind. If only he had stopped. If only he had paused to consider the consequences of what it was that he was thinking about doing. If he had just paused long enough to contemplate the lifelong ramifications of what it would do to me and what it would do to him, it would have given him time to stop himself and save both himself and myself years of pain. I know you want to watch that TV show just a few more minutes. I know you want to stay on that computer and look at that site. I know your wife or your husband has ticked you off. I know the kids are driving you nuts. I know you want to say those words. I know you want to slam that door. I know you want to be critical. I know you want to gossip. I know you want to tell somebody else this little thing that you know to make yourself feel better and look more important in the eyes of others. But can you just pause? Can you just slow things down for a couple seconds and consider the consequences of what will happen if you do this thing you're considering? There is no such thing as a small temptation. They all start small, but not dealt with seriously and quickly. They can initiate a chain reaction that will ruin your life and the lives of the people that you love dearly. I'd be remiss not to mention this, and then I'm done. What do you do when you sin? Because I'm the one selling the book telling you that you can overcome every temptation in under 60 seconds. The reality is, as well as that book may help you, we're all still going to sin. I haven't had a perfect day yet. And so, how do you deal with that? Well, let me use this as an example. Hopefully that will help you. Do you know that at the end of today, you're going to smell? It's true. In fact, when I was coming in here today, some of you were hugging me, and it's already started for some of you. It's true. Why is it that you scrub up in the morning, you put on deodorant, you do the best you can throughout the day to stay clean, but at the end of the day, you smell? Do you know why you smell? I'm going to tell you why. Because of the high temperature that exists in your armpits, bacteria and microbes multiply there by the millions, and they love to live there. But your armpits also secrete oils, and the oils trap the bacteria in your armpits. And the microbes and bacteria, they don't smell, but what happens is, because they're trapped in the oils, they can't escape, and so they die there by the millions. It's the odor of death that you smell in your armpits every day. You've got the entire population of Colorado dying in your armpits every single day. It's no wonder there's a little bit of odor with all of that carnage going on. Scrubbing off only works for a little while. Last year's really good shower might have been great for last year, but that's not going to help you today. What's the obvious word picture here? You and I sin daily. We can't get rid of the smell by ourselves. That sin sticks to us and it begins to smell. The fact is, last week's really great quiet time might have been great for last week. Congratulations, but that's not going to help you today. Last year's or last decade's really good repentance might have been great for last decade, but that's not helping you right now. What do we do? The reality is I sin so often, several times a day, in fact, that I have to take several spiritual showers to keep clean. What do we do? The only thing we can do is go back to our spiritual high priest who's willing to wipe us off and make us clean so that we can move forward. I recognize that no matter how much effort I put into it, I'm going to sin. But let me tell you something, folks. You're not a failure if you begin to smell. It's just what happens in this world. It's going to happen. You can't avoid it. If walking around in this world gets you dirty, wash off. The farmer gets up in the morning and he puts on clean clothes. He looks in the mirror and he's ready to go out into the field. He sees that he's nice and clean and he's ready to go. And he goes into the field and he works hard all day and he gets mud up his pants and his arms and maybe on his face. He didn't try to get dirty. It's just what happens when you're out in the field. When he comes home at the end of the day, he looks back in that same mirror. And he doesn't do this. Oh, I got dirty in the field today. I'm a bad farmer. I think I'll have to fall away from farming because every day I get dirty. No, he knew that being in the field was going to get him dirty. So what does he do? He washes off. He gets cleaned up and he gets ready for the next day. Listen, folks, the blood of Jesus is big enough to cover every failure and mistake and sin in your life. With God, you win if you finish the race, not if you run a perfect race. God one day will say, well done, faithful servant. Not perfect, but faithful servants. And he loves you so much as the perfect Father that he would rather have you with all of your problems and challenges and issues than not have you at all. The question is, do you have the courage and strength to follow Jesus in spite of your difficulties, insecurities, and failings? Who will you bow down to? Who will you submit to? Who will you give your life to, even when things are difficult, inconvenient, and the suffering is real? The goal that God has for your life is not that you don't have problems. The goal that God has for your life is that you know him. Temptation isn't a bad thing. No, it's your chance to show the spiritual and physical world who you're devoted to. It's even necessary. It allows you to grow. We have to plan for it, be ready for it. We have to realize if not immediately dealt with, it could ruin our lives and others. Finally, when it does happen, we need to go to our high priest who will make us clean. Brothers and sisters in Denver, I can't tell you how honored my wife and I and our staff have been to be here with you, to be with you today. You know, the truth is I've heard about the Denver church for many years. Your faith, your hard work, your convictions. I was so honored a few years ago to be here. Can't tell you how privileged Kathy and I and our staff have been to see your faith today, face to face. We're tremendously honored. Thank you.